The Panthers are back in action this afternoon in Sunrise, and the Panthers' lack of representation at the 2025 World Junior Championships. More about quality over quantity.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Saturday, December 28th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off your first purchase. And you could do that all on Game Time. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here on the show once again to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. Apologies for not getting a podcast out over the last 3 days celebrating the holidays. I personally have multiple Christmases to get to whenever it's about seeing family throughout this time of year, but always want to get a pod before the Panthers drop the puck in a game. So I just also thankfully am getting this out there for you guys. And if you guys happen to be pressing play on this podcast and you want to finish it right before the Panthers take on the Habs, be my guest and play this podcast at 2 times the speed if you would like for that, as we are recording this at 10:23 a.m. Saturday morning as of right now. But with the year coming to an end, and obviously if you are watching this on YouTube, you see that I have a different background here. I'm back home in West Kendall in South Florida, and also I had an opportunity to do more Christmas shopping after the fact for another Christmas get together that I'm doing. And a lot of it is sports related, some of them Florida Panthers related, and really got a little bit of time to just reflect on everything from the journey of this year. When you think of not only personally, but just as you guys who come here on the podcast to listen to one thing and one thing only, it's Florida Panthers hockey. And this being a big part of my life and being a big part of yours, the fact that you guys are coming here in the first place to listen to, it really gives me an opportunity to really reflect on everything that we've been through the last year when it comes to this team eventually getting to winning a Stanley Cup. I mean, just thinking about it, driving to Pat on 595 and seeing the first billboard from that is Stanley Cup champions, and the fact that the buzz is still very strong in the store whenever people were buying their fair share of sports memorabilia or apparel. A lot of the section for the Florida Panthers, a lot of eyes are on it because they want to represent a winner. And I think of when it came to just overall starting the year, from the ups and downs, Panthers were coming off that holiday break strong with a back-to-back win against Montreal and New York, which was 2 games in 2 nights for the Panthers at the time. Started out the year with a boarding call from Jason Zucker on Nick Cousins to start the year, losing Barkov in Vegas. And then the Panthers dominating from there. They lost Erod in that game as well. That stretch of Sam Reinhart scoring 8 straight on special teams. There was a loss against the Detroit Red Wings at home, where the Panthers last minute got a nationally televised game due to a blizzard in Buffalo. They ended up losing that game, which I felt the Panthers did not get an opportunity to go up on a power play due to Evan Rodriguez being called for embellishment. And they lose that game at home. And then you see outstanding performances by Anthony Stolarz against Nashville on the road, Buffalo on the road, which the Nashville won a great stop on Gustav Nyquist when he was just down on his side and he gets the glove. The shutout in Buffalo, Ryan Lomberg getting a power play goal when the game was out of reach and then skated by the Sabres bench after this one. A win before the All-Star break where every single player involved on the game-winning goal was an offseason acquisition from Bill Zito. Stoli didn't freeze the puck, got it up. Evan Rodriguez assists to Oliver Ekman-Larsson for the overtime winner. March had games where Barkov had that incredible assist to Sam Reinhart, batting the puck in the air around Keandre Miller and then getting it to him there to score a goal there. Also, injury scares. with shortly after getting Vladimir Tarasenko, he collides with Aaron Ekblad, and then Aaron Ekblad doesn't even return until game 1 of the postseason. And Carter Hagee also being hobbled right before the playoffs, and then he gets back into the lineup in game 82. We question whether it was the right call injury-wise, health for Carter Hagee to get back in that game against one of his former teams in the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then that stretch of the last 4 games for the Panthers that they went on that run with Boston slipping and then clinching the division, home ice through the first 2 rounds, which ended up being very beneficial. And then 2 shutouts along that last homestand for the Panthers, one of them against Columbus, which there was a former player from the Columbus Blue Jackets who spoke about mailing it in January, how them as a franchise, which we'll get to that player a little later. We'll get to that in segment 3. And then in that same homestand, Lundell scores once again against the Ottawa Senators. He scored multiple goals on a sharp angle, but the one in that homestand was a stretch pass from Anthony Stolarz on the power play, catching the Senators in a change, and then scoring to make it 2-0. 2 goals in the first period, and then nothing after that. The Panthers played shutdown hockey from there. And getting over Sam Bennett's hand injury, Lomberg getting sick in round 1, drama with Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand, which they'll probably play on a line together come Four Nations. The Pasta Matthew Tkachuk fight in game 2, how head scratching it was when the Panthers were down 2-1 against the New York Rangers after dominating most of the series from that point. And then the turning point of not only the series, but the entire playoffs, the game 4 winner in overtime from Sam Reinhart. Montour download to Barkov to Sam Reinhart, where one bounce goes another way. You might be talking about a different result in that series, and the Rangers may not be in the turmoil that they're currently in. And I remember just on the game-winning goal by Alex Wennberg, I mean, out of position on the face-off with Sam Bennett still being down a line from recovering from the injury, and then the positioning with him and Evan Rodriguez was a little off. That helped Alex Wennberg get open right in the slot for them. And then in that same series, Vladimir Tarasenko on the defensive side of the game, he was doing everything well with blocking shots, but the offensive game didn't really show up until later in that series, and then getting that game winner in game 6. And then how the Panthers ended series once again, games 5 and 6 against the New York Rangers, and then doing it in the clincher against the Edmonton Oilers, and just saying, you want the puck, come and get it from us. And then doing that and getting it in the corner and out-muscling guys. And then even when losing a 3-0 series lead, I mean, Evan Rodriguez, 3 goals in the first 2 games and an assist on the first game of the first goal of game 7. Scary moments too in that series, with Warren Foegele getting a 5-minute major and a game misconduct after a knee-on-knee collision with Eetu Luostarinen, Barkov and Leon Draisaitl, that collision with Barkov going to the locker room and missing the entire majority of game 2, and the Panthers still possessing the puck, because in game 1 it was mostly the Oilers dominating the possession, but Sergei Bobrovsky was just outstanding in this one. And then after winning it, and then Sam Reinhart, the most iconic goal in the history of this franchise, gets the contract after. Stories at the Cup with Vladimir Tarasenko donating money to Broward Health, Bennett starting Benny's buddies coming into this year, Kyle Okposo riding into the sunset for him into retirement. And everything in between. Brandon Montour taking it to the Six Nations in Ontario, the overseas of a skateboard going over the Stanley Cup with Barkov's day with the Cup. And even this year, even though it is a top story in the NHL, but not for a good reason, with the Panthers being involved in the ceremonies of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau coming in with the Skittles and purple Gatorade. Johnny Gaudreau was like Buddy the Elf. He loved sugar. And celebrating the life, having Adam Boquist and Sam Bennett at the front of the line for the Panthers, of guys who knew Johnny Gaudreau, being part of that, and then seeing the banner raised with that one song from Coldplay. I forget the name of it, but it was just a beautiful thing to be a part of. Although it was a really sad moment in our year overall for the entirety of the NHL, but the Panthers being involved in that, and then having the spirits along that for them, and even in the beginning of the season for them, carrying that over from the moment, once again, how focused the team was from raising the banner on opening night, and then just continuing to show up in games that are important. The Panthers 9-1-0 against teams that they faced in the postseason the last 2 years. Their focus level, although they still can't figure out the Chicago Blackhawks, especially on the road, that the Panthers get up for the games that are most important to them, and also navigating this once again with not having a permanent answer on the power play of who's going to quarterback it, because I still don't think Aaron Ekblad is the permanent solution for the Panthers. And then adding shorthanded goals to their arsenal with having 6 more than the next best team in the NHL. Incredible how once again that they won a Stanley Cup and they possibly gotten better in that department. And the penalty kill percentage might not reflect that for the Panthers, but the fact that they're scoring on that end of the ice with so many other guys getting involved, Jesper Boquist, Eetu Luostarinen recently for them, and for the Cats, it's just continuing on the building as the guys are still in their prime, and able to, and Bill Zito being able to get guys on the cheap who want to be part of a Stanley Cup winner for them. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to have a little bit of a World Junior discussion for the tournament, and the Panthers having a prospect involved in the tournament through, and as we are 2 days through the World Junior Championships. We are going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks. The best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money, whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports. Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on all the action. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week on Prize Picks, I'm eyeing the hockey board, looking at Jack Hughes for more than 4 shots on goal and Artemi Panarin for more than 1 assist. It's so simple to make my picks and have fun with friends while potentially catching out fast. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly, and you can do that all on Prize Picks. Run your game. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Saturday, a rare Saturday edition of the show. But once again, we want to get a show out there right before the Panthers play another game. That's a rule of mine, even if I don't get it to you guys by the typical Monday through Friday standard that we have here at Locked On for the company. But the Panthers, one of the greatest parts of the hockey calendar in the year is not only the playoffs, the beginning of the season, but it's this time of year where the World Juniors are going on. This year it's going on in Ottawa, and for the Panthers, the last few years they have not had a lot of representation for the U-20's, and last year they had 2. This year, they only have 1, but I tried to look at the different contenders, or the teams who might not be contenders anymore, who have sold a lot over the last few years, who might not have a lot of representation in the tournament. And this is a position that the Florida Panthers kind of want to be in, if we're being honest. I mean, if you look at teams like Seattle and St. Louis, those 2 teams have each 9 prospects in the U-20's. Nashville currently has 8. I mean, despite a lot of first round picks going out the door for Nashville, they have still been kind of developing well over the last few years, thanks to David Poile and even eventually getting to Barry Trotz. Canada, a hard lineup to crack for the Panthers. No Hunter St. Martin, no Grayson Sachin for them. We'll get a little bit into Canada later, but the teams who don't have a lot of representation are teams also who have won recently. In the Vegas Golden Knights, they have 3. The Tampa Bay Lightning have 2. The Panthers and Avalanche each have 1 prospect involved in this tournament. So it's really for the Panthers, when you've sold so much as you have over the last few years. This is a result of that. And once again, just like the draft, how when you don't have to worry and you could just sit down, watch the games and look back and say, okay, we're not relying on X person to change the franchise around. Someone is going to be looking at Gavin McKenna, the first overall pick likely in the 2026 draft, Hunter St. Martin's teammate out in Medicine Hat. Someone is looking at him saying, hopefully that's the franchise changer for us, whichever team that may be for them. But a lot of drama also so far in the World Juniors as well. Canada lost to Latvia 3-2 after giving up 55 shots. And then Zane Parekh, one of the players who did not make Team Canada, Calgary Flames prospect, liked a photo of the final score, which Daily Faceoff shared after. So a little bit of pettiness there from a player who didn't get in on the team there for Canada. And also cool stories of the goaltender for Kazakhstan, Vladimir Nikitin, who is the only draft prospect on Kazakhstan's team and the only Ottawa Senators draft pick prospect as well there. So a little bit of pressure for him to perform there and also for the Panthers, their only draft prospect, Linus Eriksson. I went back to his elite prospects profile after seeing a little bit of the tape from the last 2 days, and the elite prospects profile kind of reflected a lot of the goals that were scored that were in result of Linus Eriksson's battle along the boards that resulted in the first one, which even though he didn't get a point in it, he won a board battle, got it back up high, and then drove to the net to create a screen. So those are the little things that he does. That with his frame, him being a left-handed shot as well, it was a battle on the near side corner that was getting it to the same point. So, won the battle, got a proper angle on his stick to get it back up, and also got resulted in the first goal of the game. And also the fifth goal of the game for the Swedes, he scored off the rush on a 3-on-2, finished it past the glove far side. So there's a lot of speed there with Linus Eriksson, along with a wicked shot from him. And also his second goal, which was on the second day for Team Sweden, he was set up from a one-timer from behind the goal line. So there was also conversations of Linus Eriksson slipping in round 2 in this most recent draft, and the Panthers still were able to get him there. So for the Panthers, it's really about quality over quantity for him. And also, there's a little bit of hope for certain teams in the World Junior Tournament. Although things aren't necessarily going well for the Detroit Red Wings after firing Derek Lalonde, the conversation once again is how badly the team has been built at the NHL level by Steve Yzerman, and the fact that you hired a franchise legend, and that it's hard to let someone like him go, especially how he set up the Tampa Bay Lightning right before Julien BriseBois finished the job. That's hard to do for the Ilitch family, and this is their first mid-season firing since the early 80s. So this is rare for the Detroit Red Wings, but also two prospects that really stand out for them: and Axel Sandin Pellikka, who got 11 shots on goal, and he's a defenseman. So that's maybe one thing that Steve Yzerman has for him, and also Trey Augustine, which for Team USA, even at the World Junior level, looks to have the edge in goaltender. We spoke about how much they have the edge for 4 nations and possibly the Olympics. It's happening again at the junior level for Team USA. So that's, for me, that's something I'm very content about when it comes to the state of goaltending for this country, for international tournaments for them. But Sweden 2-0. USA is playing Latvia today at 3:30. The games are on NHL Network in the US and TSN in Canada. Sweden is 2-0. They'll be playing Switzerland tomorrow at noon, and USA will be back at it against Finland at 2:30 on Sunday in Ottawa. And what a way for Team Canada to rebound with having Germany on the schedule, which that was USA's first opponent, which they won by a final of 12-4. One player that's really stand out for Team USA for me is Zeev Buium, who's the teammate of Panthers prospect Jack Devine over in the University of Denver. That's really an impressive defenseman for Team USA. He's a Minnesota Wild prospect, and also I remember just talking about it with Seth Topal of Locked On Wild, just how when Bill Guerin taking the risk that he has, taking one on for David Jiricek after everything not working out in Columbus, and then adding that along with guys like Brock Faber and then Steve Bouillon coming in the ranks, and then a lot of the cap jail money that they're going to be out of after this year, I think, and also Kirill Kaprizov playing at an MVP level, which I think he's likely going to win the Hart Trophy this year. That is that based on this tournament and also based on his rise for him, that for Minnesota, I think that it's going to be a defense core that's actually building up pretty well, and also Philip Gustafsson for them in goal. Although he's been up and down with injuries, he's also proven to be a number one there for Minnesota. So that is a team that is also on the rise throughout everything that they've worked through in these last few years. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3. We are going to preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Montreal Canadiens from Sunrise. We are going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money has made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. And Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscription, monitors your spending, and helps you lower bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. And cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Third and final segment here on this Saturday, December 28th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Saturday. And the Panthers, this is the part of the year always where the Panthers welcome in the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers during this week of the year. The Snowbirds are here in Florida, and they get to kill two birds with one stone. They get to enjoy their time on the beach, which is right now a 75-degree day here in South Florida, and they get to go to the beach not necessarily in the early afternoon because, there's a game to be played for people who are down here, and they get to watch their teams at the same time. So that is a benefit that the NHL is taking advantage of for the people traveling down here for those trips, and people who own property in multiple places. So cool, good for them that they get that. But I'm interested, really, really interested to see now with the Panthers winning a Stanley Cup, although there will always be a good representation of the oldest franchise in the NHL in its history in Montreal. There will always be that representation, good, bad, for them. That I just want to see what the proportion is for Panthers and Habs fans at Emirates Bank Arena after coming off a Stanley Cup, especially with the Panthers going at it again and not missing a beat for them. And also the Panthers, their record is identical from this point last year to this year. Also played more games because remember, they're still finishing the regular season at the same time as last year, just putting the games more condensed due to what's going on with Four Nations face-off for that week and a half stretch in February. But going to the Habs side of things, big offseason acquisition in Patrik Laine. Recently returned to the lineup, played the last 10 games. All eight of his goals have been scored on the power play. And if you're an everydayer to this podcast, you've probably listened to my crossover with Laura Saba of Locked On Canadiens. And I made a bold prediction at the time. And it was not looking good last month, where I said I predicted that the Montreal Canadiens would not finish at the bottom of the Atlantic Division, that it would actually be Buffalo. Now with Buffalo ending a 13-game losing streak, they recently won the last two. They won last night against the Chicago Blackhawks and manhandled the New York Islanders right before the break. But it was not looking good. That prediction that I made of the Habs not finishing last in the Atlantic because Patrik Laine himself raises the floor that much. If he doesn't go through that injury early on in the preseason, maybe it's a different story for the Canadiens as the kids are taking over for Montreal. Lane Hudson is on the power play 1 for the Habs, in conversation for the Calder Trophy, along with Macklin Celebrini, Matvei Michkov, those guys. So the floor for Montreal, the points might not show it, but it's a franchise that, for Patrik Laine, getting him into the mix, it's hopefully helping those guys develop more. I know Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki aren't necessarily kids anymore, but still helping out the guys like a Yurov Slafkovsky for the Habs, and also what's coming up for them in the pipeline in Ivan Danilov. I know David Reinbacher is currently out due to with injury, which Patrik Laine, he exited a game just recently against the Columbus Blue Jackets, but he did practice, was a full participant in practice, so expect them to play against his buddy Alexander Barkov, which Patrik Laine made a little bit of comments about the Columbus Blue Jackets recently when he made his return over there, talking about how the Jackets mail it in when it comes to January, and Zach Werenski took a little bit of exception to that. And maybe the timing was a little strange for him to make that comment. I'm surprised it wasn't more towards the offseason, but preparing for the matchup, maybe trying to get into his opponent's heads there. But for Patrik Laine and Zach Werenski, for him, and I also want to be sensitive on everything that Patrik Laine has went through. We don't necessarily know all the details. It's also none of our business. But at the same time, I mean, I spoke about a few times recently about being careful what you wish for when you want a team to rebuild. Thankfully, the Panthers are not in that situation. But when you go through scorched earth rebuilds, and then how long it takes to build it from the ground up, and then you get used to losing. So with the Jackets being used to it, and then the losses piling on, it unfortunately gets comfortable for a team. And does it stink for guys? Yes, but you need to see a little bit of signs of progress for them. And based on being in a situation before for Patrik Laine in Winnipeg, who has made the playoffs multiple times, and going from that to Columbus, I can see why he sees it that way for the Jackets, after them not really making much noise since they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in that sweep in 2019. So I can see why he possibly sees that for Columbus, or saw that, excuse me, past tense. But the Habs, they're going into this game with now that the roster freeze is over, Caden Primo will be placed on waivers later today when they practiced yesterday in Fort Lauderdale. Jakub Dobes, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. 5th round goaltender, was called up by the Habs from Laval, has a 931 save percentage, 244 goals against average, 5th round draft pick from them in the 2020 draft. So he will be making his NHL debut against the Florida Panthers. So what a way for the Habs to come out of the break to face the Stanley Cup champion in the Florida Panthers, and the Florida Panthers knowing that they'll be facing a goaltender who's making their NHL debut. So and at the same time, I will be honest, I don't know how to predict a game like this. Coming off a break, it's against the team that you haven't had really a lot of adversity. Right before losing in that back-to-back in the beginning of April against Montreal, that was the point where the Panthers were losing 2 of 10, and that was where really things were, the worry meter was starting to move a little up. I wouldn't say panic meter, worry meter. I'll use that one instead for them. prior to that, the Panthers won 7 in a row. And then the last game that they lost before that was the 10-2 game in game 82 of the President's Trophy season. It was Jonas Johansson versus Carey Price in the very last game that Carey Price ever played in the NHL. So that's how dominant this series has been for the Florida Panthers and over the Montreal Canadiens recently for them. The Panther side of things, Matthew Tkachuk practiced in front of a full house of fans. They had an open practice for them just recently on Friday. Jesper Buck was back after that scary situation in Minnesota where a check was finished, helmet flies off and then hits his head on the ice. Nico Mikkola was not on the ice for the Panthers on Friday. And Paul Maurice did say that he will not be dressed for this afternoon's game against the Montreal Canadiens from Sunrise, Florida. So expect Adam Boqvist to be part of the lineup for them today. And also we will get a opportunity to see former prospect Emil Hyman, who the Panthers traded for Sam Bennett, who the Calgary Flames later flipped in the Sean Monahan trade, which the conditions, I remember just looking at the list of conditions on Cap Friendly right before the Washington Capitals purchased it, and the NHL said that it can no longer be public. The list of conditions of where that could land for, it's a little bit of an eyesore. I'll say that for when it comes to discussing the trades and where the Panthers 2025 draft pick, first round pick will end up, which once again, it's so great to see that the Panthers are one step closer to actually not being in a position to possibly trade first round picks again, because they're still in that position to contend for them. So also, whenever you're looking at teams who are rebuilding and you're facing off against them, you also maybe want to see who they could be interested in when it comes to the deadline. I mean, March 7th is still just over 2 months away. So maybe if they need bottom six help for them, maybe they could be interested in someone like a Joel Armia. His contract is pretty cheap. The Panthers could possibly use a 25% retained or even 50. The Panthers will have around $2 million in deadline cap space money. So if they were to get Joel Armia into the mix for the Cats, they could get him at possibly under $1 million for them. He's an expiring deal. Big part of the Habs run to the 2021 final. So maybe a player that the Panthers could possibly bring in for them. And the retained salary for Montreal and someone else, if they have a broker involved, it could possibly help the Panthers still make another move into possibly adding up. And if they want to go for the route of adding a depth defenseman for them, if they want to add one of a forward, one of a D for them, if in their attempt to repeat as a Stanley Cup champion. So we'll see what happens there. So that is another player that I'm eyeing for the Panthers. So looking at this little by little for when the Panthers do take on these teams who are likely to sell at the deadline. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day, and we will be back here possibly Monday night again, where the Panthers for a post-game edition of the show, where the Panthers will be taking on the New York Rangers. So make sure you subscribe so you know everything when everything comes out. And also make sure to also follow the account on Twitter and Blue Sky, LO_FLA Panthers on that platform, LO_FLA Panthers, on Blue Sky, and LO_FLA Panthers on Instagram. So make sure you also subscribe to other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steel Ronan. And also, because it's World Junior time, especially, you guys should subscribe to Locked On NHL Prospects with Heidi Halakash and Sebastian High, as they will have all your World Junior coverage for these last 2 weeks. So definitely a podcast that you guys should all listen to. So thank you guys all for listening, and I will talk to you guys soon. I'm Armando Velez, signing off, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.